So it is my pleasure to welcome on Saul Sehy, host of the Stacking Benjamins podcast, which has been rated as the best finance podcast by Kiplinger and others. Joe records from his mom's basement, where he and I once played a game of Monopoly on a board so old that free parking had a picture of a horse and buggy. Welcome, Joe.
That was an old board. That was an old board.
It's I love like all the antiques back there. It's like so retro going into your mom's basement.
I am so glad, by the way, one of the two of us wore the team colors because I did not, but you brought it. Good man.
Hey, it's the least I can do after you mailed me one in Israel. So,
well, do you like on the back? I don't know if you can turn around, but on the back is all kinds of middling reviews of our show.
Yes, I love that.
Yes, it's fantastically okay. I think it's my favorite one.
I like the one about the guy who always wears the bag over his head whenever he listens to it.
Just to feel at home. Sure. Right.
Absolutely. So, Joe, you used to be a financial advisor, a profession that makes many people nervous as they're afraid that maybe the advisors are thinking more about their interest than the clients. I mean, first of all, is that a valid fear?
It is a valid fear, but I think it's overplayed by a media that really doesn't understand what the financial profession does. And I think it's the easiest thing to write about, frankly, when you're not sure what to write about financial advisors. Fees become a very sexy, fees are always a sexy topic for people in finance, right? But I also think that the financial industry, the financial industry doesn't do a good job of eliminating those fears because the barrier to entry to financial advisory services is not that high. It really is not that high. You could put a shingle out and call yourself a financial advisor, follow a few very simple rules, and bam, you're advising people. And so the reason I think people don't know what a good financial advisor does is because the industry hasn't done a good job of teaching people what a good financial advisor does. So while that's a great fear, I don't think it should stop you. I think the biggest problem I see, Dave, is that people say, well, you don't need a financial advisor. That's like saying, I don't need good people in my corner. I always want to have, I don't care if it's a financial advisor, somebody to help with my diet, somebody to coach me, whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be licensed people. I just like smarter people than me helping me make better decisions along the road. So for me, having a financial advisor, not really an option. I have a financial advisor who's incredibly smart. Do I take all of his advice? Nope. I do not. And what's funny is I was a financial advisor for 16 years myself. I do a financial podcast and I have a financial advisor. But the reason I have a financial advisor, Dave, is because I want somebody to tell me, number one, I'm full of crap, right? Somebody that goes, you know what, dude, that is dumb. You shouldn't be doing that. I really want that voice in my corner. The second thing is my wife has known me forever. She's known me. We've been married for 26 years. She knows me. And when I say something, she just rolls her eyes, go, oh, yeah, whatever. But if our financial advisor says it, then it's a whole different story. So having this person that helps the two of us get our money straight and our decision-making straight, I think is also good. So the fear's valid. I think the outcome of what we do with that fear by saying, you know what, I don't need one, I think that's misplaced.
Gotcha. Now, I've heard you talk a bit about some financial advisors, like they're advising you on what things to be getting, but they're really advising you on all these things where they get commissions, they get fees.
Yeah.
And how common is that when you're dealing with
Very
people?
common. Oh, it's incredibly common. But here's the thing. So I've known people that are commission-based advisors who I would send my mom to, right? I know other people who are fee-only advisors who are some of the biggest morons I've ever met. So while that's a fantastic thing, what we're talking about here, paying somebody a fee for service and saying, I'm going to pay you X amount of money, create a plan for me, then I go implement it wherever I want. I can choose the best stuff. I can make sure that the product mix is what I need it to be. I'm also much more sure that you're probably objective versus if you get a commission to sell me something. That said, studies have shown that if somebody pays, and this is, by the way, right out of a great book that I like. Rick Edelman has a great book called The Truth About Money. And in The Truth About Money, he talks about, and he, by the way, is a fee advisor. So he's not a commission guy. Rick Edelman did a study that says that even though people rip on commission advisors, people are much more likely to implement with a commission advisor than they are with a fee advisor. What does that mean? That means that a lot of people are out there, they do the right thing, they pay a fee, they avoid a commission-based advisor, and then they do absolutely nothing with all this fantastic information. And the reason for that is, Dave, if you're my advisor, there's no incentive for you to say, let's get moving. You've already been paid. Because you've already been paid, you're like, here's good advice, take it or leave it. By the way, that's why I like being in financial media now. What I struggle with being a financial advisor was I really struggle with this idea of me caring more than my client, or me being so personally, emotionally invested when people wouldn't do what I said. And I thought that it was such good advice, and then people wouldn't do it. I spent so many nights just so discouraged when people would just do the wrong thing. Even though I was in their corner, my job was to help them as a shepherd with their money. But I guess back to the issue, when it comes to commission-based people are going to make sure you implement. You know why? Because that's when they get. And so directionally doing something that is 95% the right thing versus getting 100% the best advice and doing absolutely nothing with it, which one's better? Doing the 95% right thing, right? So I've seen people with commission-based advisors go a long way. They buy these funds with huge fees. They buy annuities, which can be absolutely horrible. Like, they buy all these horrible investments, and they still, despite all of this junk that they're using, they still find a way to get the job done because they had somebody in their corner who was pushing them. So, by the way, my defense right there of commission-based advisors doesn't mean that I would hire one. I wouldn't. It just means that if you're going to hire a fee-only advisor, realize that you're going to have to make sure that you implement the stuff, because the advisor is not going to push you. And I'm a guy, by the way, who's as lazy as the next guy, Dave. I like to be pushed. So that's why I believe in gamifying things. I believe in having strong people in my corner, people that complain at me that I'm not working fast enough. I love it. I absolutely love it. I have a very Gordon Ramsay personality. You know, people know Gordon Ramsay, the chef guy. Like, I'm fairly blunt. When I was an advisor, I was fairly blunt, and I like blunt people in my corner. And I think for each of us, knowing who that person is and what our weakness is a big part of it.
So it sounds like you like an advisor who's almost like a coach, who can point out your blind spots, who can let you see strategies you can't see elsewhere, who could talk to your wife in a way that it's not coming from you. But you're not necessarily looking for a guy who's a salesman of, you know, a mutual fund salesman who's trying to like sell you something that he gets paid on.
Right. And by the way, you know, there's two types of experts. There are experts in process and there are experts in products. I always want to make sure my advisor is an expert in process and I understand the process. So let's say that you and your wife, Dave, are looking to achieve some goal. Well, what's the process of getting that? We talk about the goal. We find out what the goal cost. We bring it back to today. How are we going to get there? It's going to cost X amount of money times Y return to get that goal, right? And then what is the thing? And this is the last thing. What's the thing we're going to use, the product we're going to use to get there? So I love that. I love, hey, I want to buy a house. Okay, well, let's go through the process of buying a house. And then finally, we get through the process. We then determine the right house. If somebody's an expert in this house, right, they're going to start off with, how do I get your butt in this house? And so if somebody tells me they're an insurance expert, I'm sorry, I run away. Because what if I don't need insurance? I mean, there's other ways to manage risk besides insurance. What if somebody's an annuity expert? No, thank you. Absolutely not. I'm a mutual fund. Nope, sorry, don't want that. So if somebody's an expert in a product, I run. If they're an expert in process, then I'm listening.
Are there other warning signs that would make you run from a financial advisor?
Yeah, I think if somebody comes in immediately and they're pitching right away, you know, I found most good financial advisors, Dave, really don't care if you hire them or not. Like they just don't get, they have plenty of clients. They're doing great without you. They're just kind of laying the advice out there. But if somebody's like, oh, please hire me. Please hire me. Like if you're the person that's going to make sure that they can make roll next week or their family eats next week, I mean, I feel bad for that person, but I don't want to be the person who is, financial advisors should be good with money, right? They should be somebody
Ideally, yeah.
Yeah, they're good with money. They know what they're doing with money. They coach other people. They're very blunt with their advice. They're like, listen, here's the way that you do this. This is the process. But also, they're a good listener. Somebody who's not plugging their one size fits all advice into my life. There was a cool commercial that I saw about this. A guy sitting with, might have been a Super Bowl maybe 10 years ago, a guy sitting with a financial advisor. And the guy is clearly getting close to retirement. Financial advisor is a younger guy. Financial advisor leans forward and goes, here's what I see. I see a villa in Tuscany. The guy goes, oh yeah. The client goes, that's fantastic. He goes, maybe even a boat. And so that's fantastic. And I also see retirement at maybe 44, 45. The guy goes, wait, I'm 57. The advisor goes, oh, we were talking about you? You don't want that guy.
No. Okay. Now, well, I personally don't find your money strategies offensive. I've heard you say that you prefer an offensive to a defensive strategy. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. I like, when was I talking about that in relation to what? I always think that the best offense or the best defense is a good offense. But for me, I think that comes more to my career, that I believe that when it comes to two different things, one is better than the other. And there's two sides of a balance sheet. One is your expenses and your liabilities, and the other one is your assets and your income, right? So if I'm talking about cash flow, I've got two options to make things better. The defensive strategy is I'm going to go clip coupons and I'm going to cut my expenses and I'm going to lower things to the point that I can afford it. That's fine. You can get there that way. By the way, and a lot of people waste a ton of time making little tiny coupon clipping moves versus the big moves. If you're going to cut expenses, and you know this from your own book, you could do three things that'll really help, right? You change your housing expense, change your automobile cost, and then third, your food costs. Those are your three in order. Like, look at those three first. Most people look at little tiny expenses. Oh, maybe if I don't turn on the lights over here for 10 minutes a day. Okay, you might save a few pennies there.
Well, the big one is often, whenever I hear people talk about that, I hear people talk about housing and transportation and food, but they usually leave out the number two, which is taxes.
Oh, well, but the issue with taxes, so taxes is a longer term play. That's an interesting point. And I want to get back to that, but I do want to finish this one thing, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
The more offensive strategy is make more money. A lot of times as a financial advisor, people would come in and they would want to decrease expenses. That's fine. I could help them do that. It is so much easier to make more money. And when we would come up with a strategy to either ask your boss for a raise, there was a study done, and I'm not going to have the number right here, but so many bosses want, maybe not here in the time of COVID, you got to pick your right time. But in a normal time, your boss wants to give you a raise. You just haven't asked. And your boss's job is not to take care of your bottom line. Their job is to take care of the company's bottom line. So if you don't ask, they think that you're okay. Well, if you can present to them in a way that is that's great for the company and great for you, that you should be paid more, they are more than happy to do that in a lot of cases, not in every case. And then we also see, women more or less likely to not want to rock the boat than men as well. Women especially are underpaid. And part of that is this systemic stuff going on, but also studies show women don't ask for the raise as much as men do as well. So you also have that. If you're also the idea of a side hustle, this idea of earning extra income. My son's 25 years old. He started buying houses, listening to a show called Bigger Pockets.
Sure.
He started buying houses 8 months ago. He owns three. Kids just out of college, already setting up this side win. Now, on his end, he started off with a great job, kept his expenses low so that he could buy that first house, right? So that was the key. He also got a signing bonus where he started. Not a lot of college kids get that. So I get there's some privilege there. He also worked his ass off, right, during college. So he set himself up for that, and he works in a job where he could do that. But looking at these side gigs, even if it's not that, there are so many ways to make more money, Dave, that people don't explore because they're too busy clipping coupons so they can save 75 cents. But back to your tax thing. Taxes are great, but taxes are a long-term strategy. As an example, those houses my son is buying are much more tax efficient than his primary job is. The worst way to make money is through a W-2 income. That is the worst way it's the most heavily taxed way to make money. Owning investments taxed a lot less. And then when you can put tax sheltering strategies in place, like Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs, putting money into a 401k, whatever that might be, or when it comes to the real estate game, there's 1031 exchange rules. There's all kinds of strategies out there, like knowing the tax game. You're right, is a big one. But that is a very subtle play, and it's a much more long-term play. You really want to think strategically about how am I going to get my investments in the right spot. I will tell you one thing, though.
Yeah.
With our biggest money nerds, who might be some of the people out with us, with some of our biggest money nerds, they spend a crap load of time worried about tax shelters. They don't spend enough time picking the right investment. And I want to be clear about one thing. My goal in life is to have Bill Gates' tax bill. That is my goal. My goal is to pay a crap load of taxes. Because if I pay a bunch of taxes, that means I have oodles of money, right? So there are some people that have taken the swing where, to your point, people don't think about taxes enough. They obsess over it so much that I've got to say, quit it. Just go make more money. Stop spending so much time on the tax shelter and have more cash.
So on the whole question of taxes, I know so many of us are terrified of the idea of like our bank account getting, frozen by the IRS or something along those lines. But I've heard that you actually once intentionally froze your credit card.
Yes.
A block of ice. Could you tell me a bit about that?
Well, I was horrible with money. You see people out there playing these credit card games where they get credit card reward points and stuff. And those can be fantastic for the right person. But I think that our friend Dave Ramsey has a good point, which is for the vast majority of people, credit cards are a dangerous thing, and they're not made to make you money. They're made to allow you to use somebody else's cash to buy things that you can't yet afford. So if you get into that trap where you're buying things you can't afford using somebody else's cash, you're going to pay this exorbitant interest rate. So when I was in college, I was absolutely horrible with it. I lived in a middle-class family that probably, like a lot of families, should have talked about money, but we never did. Like most families, we never did. In fact, my parents, whenever they would talk about money and my sister, brother, I would walk into the room, they would immediately stop and tell us to leave because dealing with the family's money was not our job. So here I am, I go off to college and I immediately see in the student union, like day 2 or day 3, I see this table for American Express. I can get an American Express card. By the way, I'm at a military college, Dave. I can't have a job and I'm going to get a credit card that there's no way I can pay for. But who cares? I don't remember if they were giving away a Frisbee or a beach towel or something really cool. So I stand in this line. By the way, it was a long line. All these people signing up for debt. huge long line. I'm like, if financial advisors, even the bad ones, had a line that long of people waiting to save money versus the people signing up for debt. But I finally get to the front of the table. I apply for an American Express card. Bam, they give me one, right? 2 weeks later, I've got this cool green American Express card. No idea really how it works. Kind of know how it works, but we never talked about money. So the first time we get leave, we go out to North Charleston because I was at this school called the Citadel in Charleston. We go to North Charleston to this mall, go to this exclusive restaurant called TGI Fridays. Not sure if you're familiar with it. Yeah, upscale. It might have been Ruby Tuesday, but it was one of those two. But anyway, both upscale. Fantastic places. And I don't know, there were maybe 8 of us. Man, I whipped that card out and I'm like, guys, I'm buying lunch for everybody. I got this credit. So I put that all on there. And then I went to the other end of the mall to Nordstrom, very inexpensive store.
Oh, yeah.
Incredibly inexpensive store. And I bought this sweater. I'm in a military college. I can't wear a sweater. By the way, I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. Why the hell I need a sweater? It's like 110 degrees, most of the year. And I'm buying this sweater that just looks like I could be the 5th member of Duran Duran. And with, a month later, the bill. And of course, like a lot of people, I said, oh crap, how am I going to pay this bill? And I did what most people do in that situation. The smart thing, I called my mom and I said, Mom, we have a problem. And my mom said, no, we don't have a problem. You have a problem. She goes, you got to figure it out. And there was no way for me to figure it out. I should have figured it out ahead of time, right? But I couldn't get a job. I didn't have a job. I didn't want to go put on a ski mask and rob a bank. So what did I do? I had my credit ruined within 90 days. And I spent that summer paying off a collection agency to get to take care of the bill that I owed. So I had to know myself. I had to really know myself. And then when I got my first cards after that, early on in my marriage, I immediately went out and ran them up again. Like immediately, wow. The second I got another credit card. So I had to realize that the problem wasn't the credit card. The problem kind of is the credit card, but the problem was me. The bigger problem was me. And I had to know myself. So for me, where most people will call an agency to freeze their credit, back then it was not as easy to do as it is today. I took that credit card and I put it in a block of ice. And I put it in water. I put it in the freezer. And I because I wanted it for emergencies, right? Still wanted to have it. So I put it in this bowl, froze the bowl. And then it was funny. I felt like an idiot standing there one time with a hairdryer. There was a video game I wanted. And I'm standing with a hairdryer and I'm trying to get to my credit card because I can't afford this stupid video game, but I really, really want it. And it was cool because it was the time I needed. It was this circuit breaker I needed to go, what kind of a moron are you? Like what the hell are you doing? So yeah, I froze my credit in a different way.
All right, awesome. So I want to talk about a few different hacks here as long as we're getting to that. A lot of the people we're talking to are very much in the FIRE movement, which stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And I've heard you say that you're not necessarily the biggest fan of that idea, these people who want to retire by 27 or something. And I've heard you talk about Coast FIRE. Could you talk a bit? Well, what is that? How is that different?
Yeah. So, for me, let's talk about just FIRE in general. I have an opinion, I think, that's widely held of the FIRE movement, which is that the FI part, right, the financial independence part, by the way, not new, been around forever. The acronym is new and cool, but the idea of being financially independent as soon as possible, been around for a long time and will be around for a long time. But the idea of retire early, I feel bad for a lot of people that want to retire early because of the fact that I believe most of those people are simply in a job they don't want or in a life they don't want, looking for a better one. And the bad news then is that they end up trapped in this ideal of, if I spend a ton of time right now sacrificing everything in my life, sacrificing as much as I possibly can, there's going to be this garden over here later that's going to be the most badass garden. And my life is all of a sudden going to go from crap to fantastic, it isn't going to happen. It just isn't going to happen. There's a great Saturday Night Live skit with Adam Sandler where he's pretending that he is in the skit. He's a family that does tours to Europe, and he's talking in this video that they're supposedly making on SNL. He's talking about people who are unhappy, and he said, "Listen, please don't take my tour. We've had some bad reviews. Please don't take my tour if you think that going to Italy is going to make your marriage happier than it is today. You are going to be in a beautiful country and still unhappy. You're going to be in Venice in one of those in a gondola. You'll be in a gondola in Venice and you will still be happy. It's going to be the same thing. You will now be retired and you'll be happy." So happiness is not something that you can get later. It is a whole different thing. And I believe that that's not as tied to money as people. There's a big disconnect. So I actually think that because of that, the retire early piece can be dangerous for people. Instead, then what I like is thinking about instead, what is that life that you want to live? What is it all about? And how can I bring that into my life now? So I know that in some professions you can't do this, but if you can take an extended sabbatical and just spend a year in the middle of your career going and doing the thing that you might want to do, but there's an end date, you know you can't do it forever and you're going to have to go back to work, do it now for two reasons. Number one, the future is never assured. We have no idea if we're going to get there. And then number two, we also get to play test. And this idea of A/B testing, when you talk to people in any profession, they talk about A/B testing. I've got this, which one of these is better? Now you can A/B test your old life with the new life to find out whether gondolas, living on a gondola in Venice is actually going to make you happier. I would say it won't. It'll be prettier, but it won't be happy. So I love the idea of play testing whenever possible. And if you have a career where you can't do that, that's fine. Instead, use your vacation time to play test as much as you possibly can. Think about the things that actually make you happy in life and how much are those really tied to money? And a lot of times it's much more of an internal struggle than I think people think that it is. And I think we have to solve those issues as much as we have to solve the retire early thing. But listen, being financially independent, being able to do whatever you want, whenever you want to do, I'm all for that. You and I talked today before we started recording. I have plenty of money. I'm going to be okay. I sold my house. I sold my stuff. I'm doing this hanging out with you from my co-host house right now. We're playtesting. We're figuring out what we want to do. We're going to keep working. And I'm not working, Dave, because I have to. I'm working because why would I do anything else? We had a great guest on our podcast, Dana. Oh, shoot, Dana. Dana runs Sensible Money. I can tell you that. Dana Ansbach is her name. I'm glad I came up with that. But anyway, Dana said this, and I love this quote. Dana said, "What's wrong with a life well worked? There is nothing." I think most people, have you seen the statistics on Clydesdales?
No.
Clydesdales are more likely to die early if they're not pulling heavy stuff. Like if they pull heavy stuff their entire life, they will live a long, long time. But if you put them out there like, dude, that stuff's heavy. I'm going to make sure that Budweiser Clydesdale does not have to pull that heavy thing, right? Forget it. Let's make sure that Dave doesn't have to pull that heavy thing anymore. Puts Dave out to pasture. Dave dies if he's not pulling stuff. I think to some degree as humans, we're the same way. If we're not pulling something, we pass away. We had a woman on our show too that did a study about nuns in a nurse, and nuns live a long, long, long time. Live much longer than the average. And in her study, she showed that the reason why they think nuns live longer is because they have to serve. This idea of serving somebody else makes them live longer. They did a study in a nursing home where they took two sets of people. One set, they just let them do what they do in the nursing home. The other set, they gave them a plant and they said, do not let this plant die. You cannot let this plant die. The group that had to take care of the plant lived longer as a group than the group that just was left to their own devices.
Wow. I think that's great. I love the idea of the play testing. And I've heard you say that you based your show Stacking Benjamins on this whole science of play in general. And why don't we pursue some ideas where we can make play more relevant? You talk about gamification of the whole thing. And so many people in the money sphere are so serious. And then there's you. And then there's just the total other energy. So how can we get some of that more play in our whole financial journey? How can we gamify this whole process to make it fun?
I love you bringing this up in the first place, Dave, because I think that gamifying, I'm deadly serious about gamifying it. Like, I think if you want to be serious, you have to gamify it. There are so many studies that show that if things are playful, we're going to get the concept much easier. We learn better if we think we're not learning, right? And if we do learn, we learn more if the learning is interesting and fun. I listen to a podcast, Tim Ferriss's podcast. I listen to Tim Ferriss's podcast, not because I learn a lot, because I do learn a ton listening to that podcast, but I listen to it because of the fact that I think he's a pretty good interviewer. And I love the discussions he has. And then, by the way, I also learned some stuff. But I would say I don't go there to learn. I know a lot of people do. I go there because I think there's fun, interesting conversations with, just listen to one with Hugh Jackman, which is fantastic. But the gamifying anything that you do is such an important part of winning. And I'll give you the easiest example that we can all implement. If we have a goal that's far in the future, for many people, that is financial independence, right? Maybe it's not far in the future, maybe it's close. But figuring out what that number is, for me, is a fun game, right? Let's figure out what that number is that I have to get to. And you and I are in financial groups online. You see people doing this all the time. What's your number, right? So figure out your number and then figure out what this equation is. Here's the next game. To get to that number, I need to save so much money per month times so much return to get that goal. And now I have three numbers. I've got a number to save, I've got an interest rate that I need, and I got the end goal. And for me, then, I then take that number, and every year that gives me a milestone. And the game that I play right now is I want my money to be at a milestone by the end of the year every year. So the most fun that I have is looking at, am I on pace to get this number? So I'm not even looking at the end goal, right? I'm just looking at, by January 1st of 2021, I got to be at X number. That's a fun game, and it's a much more doable game. Because I'll tell you, when I was a financial planner, if I told somebody the number was $4 million and they're 26 years old and they've saved 15 grand, they're like, $4 million. You can see the lights just turn off, right? But if I say by the end of the year, we need to get you from 15,000 to 21,000. Yeah. And oh, by the way, that's the first step to get you to 4 million. Then they go, oh, but I just got to get to 21,000 now. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, how do we get that? So now we've turned this big, huge game that is fearful into this little tiny game. So I like that. I also like using apps. I like using toys to help me learn about concepts. So
what kind of toys?
Well, I like board games. I like board games a lot. And there's some great there's some horrible, but there's also some great games that can help you learn about economics, learn about how these things work, just build thirst. I don't like educational games, by the way. Let's be clear. I don't like, a lot of people talk about the game Cash Flow, which I
like Cash Flow. You don't care for that one? We use that in our family to kind of teach the principles and learn that.
Let's put it this way. It's better than just straight reading the book, but it's a long game. It's kind of boring. But it takes his concepts and it makes them much more alive. It's also way too expensive. Like, why the hell does that game
crazy expensive?
That much? Yeah, there's Mr. Kiyosaki. You need to back that down. But anyway, the Cash Flow is okay, but games like Acquire, as an example. Acquire is a game that's been around for a long time. A lot of people probably have never heard of it, but it was, I believe, created in the 1960s by a guy named Sid Sackson. Been reprinted a number of times. You can buy it, or go to Amazon, you can buy it. It's a game about mergers and acquisitions, and you buy stock in companies. This company takes over this company, And next thing you know, you either have a lot of stock of the bigger company or you sell to get more cash so that you can. And the game doesn't really teach you anything, Dave. It doesn't teach you a bunch, but what it does is it gets you interested in the concepts so that now when you're reading some of this dry stuff about mergers and acquisitions, right? Something that the second I say mergers and acquisitions, people go, oh, thank you. Now I know how takeovers work. I know how just a little bit, so that now when I read about X company buys Y company, I kind of know a little bit about that. Oh yeah, because I played the game. That's a good game. Stockpile is a fun game about money. That's another game that I really like. I like apps that make it fun to save money. There's a cool app out there by these two dudes in Chicago. By the way, most of these apps out there are by two dudes in Chicago or two women in Detroit or whatever. They're usually these small. I love fintech. And some of the cool things people are doing. But there's an app called Tip Yourself. These two guys in Chicago came up with, and it's just, we tip the waiter. Go to a restaurant, we tip the waiter. We tip, when I was doing the estate sale stuff, these people worked their butt off. We gave them a big tip for helping us out. We tip everybody, but we never tip ourselves. And so what if I go out for a 5-mile run today? I should tip myself $10 and put it in this vacation fund that I have. So I fund my vacations by tipping myself for doing good things. It's just a fun way to make it a little bit of a game.
All right. I love that. So, Joe, if people want to find out more about you, they want to follow you, they want to hear more about how they can have fun with their money, and if their money podcast they listen to, which is it's always a crack up on Stacking Benjamins, how can they find you?
Well, thanks. 2 ways they can find me, and this was a lot of fun. Thanks a ton for having me. 2 ways. You can find us on Stacking Benjamins Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We call it a 3-ring circus. The show is meant to be a 3-ring circus. If you learn anything, you have to keep it to yourself because you ruin our reputation. It's not our goal. Our goal is basically to be an airport. We're sharing all kinds of concepts and ideas. You decide which one of those planes is for you and get on it. I also have a second show, which is called Money with Friends, for people that like financial headlines, or even better yet, Dave, people don't like financial headlines because they don't get it. They don't know what it means to them. We have a group of thought leaders that come on, different people, and we do the show live, my co-host and I, on YouTube or on Facebook. But you can also listen to the audio stream, comes out a day or 2 later. It's called Money with Friends, and we basically take a headline, and for 15 minutes, we talk about what does this mean to me. So the Fed raises interest rates or lowers interest rates. Well, why should I care? There's this news about Hertz, ripping off, supposedly lately, ripping off people by selling stock after they were bankrupt. What the hell does that mean? How do people get ripped off? Robinhood investors in the news a lot lately because it's more like sports betting than it is about buying stocks. Sports betting and stocks, what's that about? We take one headline from the popular press and we talk about it on Money with Friends. That's 6 days a week, about 15 minutes.
Okay, awesome. Well, I had a great time. It's always fun talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks a ton. I can't talk. Thanks a ton, man.